Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, hope you will be fine. Today we are going to study a very important topic which is perinatal infection. As this is a very lengthy topic, so we will cover it in 2 lectures. So what are the learning outcomes? At the end of this lecture, students should be able to understand common viral and bacterial infections seen in pregnancy that have implications for the mother and the fetus. Describe the components of perinatal infections. Differentiate between various signs and symptoms of these infections. Outline the management plan for these infections. What is the introduction? The perinatal infections, these are the most important cause of stillbirth and morbidity. Many diseases usually go undiagnosed. Appropriate treatment can prevent the morbidity and mortality. In 1971, Andrews proposed acronym TORCH, and in 1975, Herald added syphilis to the acronym. So, the viral and bacterial infections usually are very common in the pregnancy and can have significant consequences for both the pregnant mother and her infant. For some infections, routine screening is offered in many healthcare settings, but some infections are also associated with congenital abnormalities or direct consequences for fetal well-being. So this is important to know how to screen these infections, and in case of any infection, how to treat the infection, how to counsel the mother regarding the developing fetus and the effect of those infections. So this is very important. Acronym TORCH is CLAB: Toxoplasmosis, Rubella, Cytomegalovirus, Herpes simplex, Enterovirus, Syphilis, Chickenpox, Lyme disease, AIDS or HIV, Parvovirus, Hepatitis B and C, and Zika virus. Toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasmosis is a disease caused by an intracellular parasite, Toxoplasma gondii, found in cat feces, soil or undercooked meat. Human acquisition of the infection occurs by used contaminated soil, salads and vegetables. Ingestion of raw or undercooked meat containing tissue cysts. Usually sheep, pigs and rabbits are the most common meat sources. Outbreaks of toxoplasmosis have also been linked to the consumption of unfiltered water. So this is the diagrammatic representation of how the infection of toxoplasmosis occurred, and the mother dealing with the cat and she is also pregnant, she may get the Toxoplasma gondii and can get infected with it. What are the signs and symptoms? Infected pregnant women usually no clinical manifestation, although some may have a mild mononucleosis-like syndrome, regional lymphadenopathy or occasionally chorioretinitis. Similarly, infected neonates are usually asymptomatic at birth. The classic triad of findings in the fetus or neonate are chorioretinitis, hydrocephalus, ventriculomegaly or microcephaly, cerebral calcification. So this is the picture showing the hydrocephalus of the baby who is suffering from toxoplasmosis infection. How we can diagnose it? Antenatally serial IgG measurement for the maternal infection, and if we want to rule out the fetal infection, we can do the PCR of the amniotic fluid. In the neonate, IgG, IgM and IgA of both serum and CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, PCR, and examination of eye, auditory and neurological examinations, CT brain. In pregnant women with an established recent infection, Spiramycin is a drug of choice which can be given 2 to 3 grams daily in divided doses, and it should be given for 3 weeks. In neonates, when there is infection, then we can give pyrimethamine 50 mg twice daily for 2 days, then 50 mg daily. Sulfadiazine 75 mg per kg per day in 2 divided doses for 2 days, then 50 mg per kg twice daily, plus polinic acid 10 to 20 mg daily. How we can prevent or how we can counsel the mother we can ask her to avoid raw or undercooked meat, wash hands after gardening, wash raw vegetables, minimize contact with young kittens and their litter. Rubella. It is also known as German measles. It is caused by rubella, which is a toga virus spread by droplet infection. Intrauterine infection with rubella virus is referred to as congenital rubella syndrome. Infection with rubella earlier in the pregnancy, that is in the first trimester, causes worst prognosis and neonatal complications. The virus can be transmitted to the fetus through the placenta and is capable of causing serious congenital defects, abortion and stillbirth. In case of maternal infection, if the rubella infection is established, then no treatment available. If there is rubella infection in the first trimester, consider termination, because in first trimester 85 to 90% of the cases the developing fetus will be suffering from the congenital rubella syndrome, and we will discuss what are the features of the congenital rubella syndrome. If the infection occurred in the second trimester, then we can do fetal testing by amniocentesis, and if it occurs after 20 weeks gestation, then it rarely causes congenital rubella syndrome, like 1 to 2% chances that the fetus will be suffering from the congenital rubella syndrome. So the first trimester is very important regarding rubella infection. What are the features of congenital rubella syndrome? The features are intrauterine growth retardation, thrombocytopenic purpura, hemolytic anemia, hepatosplenomegaly, jaundice, radiolucent bond disease, meningoencephalitis, sensorineural deafness, general learning disability, insulin-dependent diabetes, late onset disease at 3 to 12 months with rash, diarrhea and high mortality. The clinical features, congenital heart disease, commonly patent ductus arteriosus or pulmonary artery stenosis. There are eye defects, among which there are congenital cataracts, congenital glaucoma, pigmentary retinopathy, usually called as salt and pepper appearance, severe myopia, blindness, microphthalmia and microcephaly. How we can diagnose rubella? The isolation of virus by PCR or culture, rubella specific IgM, increasing IgG over first 7 to 11 months of the life, avidity testing of IgG, rubella virus RNA by reverse transcriptase PCR in nasopharyngeal swabs, urine, CSF and blood at birth. What is the treatment? The treatment is supportive care and surveillance is the only recommended option available at this time. Close monitoring within the first 6 to 12 months of the life is recommended, particularly for the evaluation of hearing impairment. Preventive measures include recommended immunizations, testing of pregnant women for rubella immunity, and proper counseling regarding avoiding exposure. And a very important point is that rubella immunization or rubella vaccination cannot be given during the pregnancy. If a woman who is rubella negative, always counsel her that she should get a rubella vaccination after the delivery, as it is a live attenuated vaccine, so it cannot be given during pregnancy. Cytomegalovirus. Cytomegalovirus is a double-stranded DNA herpes virus, the most common congenital viral infection. The cytomegalovirus infection requires intimate contact through saliva, urine or other body fluids. Possible routes of transmission include sexual contact, respiratory droplet transmission, transplacental transmission, transmission via breast milk and blood transfusion. Though it is rare, but it can be transmitted via blood transfusion. Primary reactivation or recurrent cytomegalovirus infection can occur in pregnancy and can lead to congenital cytomegalovirus infection. It is usually asymptomatic or mild flu-like illness. Approximately 85% of the newborns with congenital cytomegalovirus infection can be asymptomatic at birth. 15% will develop progressive hearing loss and visual impairment as they age. Transplacental infection can result in congenital defects which can be seen on ultrasound. So these are the features which you can pick antenatally on the ultrasound if the cytomegalovirus infection is there. Intrauterine growth restriction or IUGR, microcephaly, ventriculomegaly, intracranial calcifications, ascites or hydrops. After the birth, you can notice sensorineural hearing loss, petechia, jaundice, hepatosplenomegaly, delayed psychomotor development, thrombocytopenia and anemia, chorioretinitis or blindness. Vertical transmission of cytomegalovirus can occur at any stage of the pregnancy. Severe sequelae are more common with infection in the first trimester. The overall risk of infection is greatest in the third trimester. The risk of transmission to the fetus in primary infection is 30 to 40%. Herpes simplex virus infection during pregnancy can pose a serious threat to the developing fetus and the newborn infant. Transmission typically occurs via direct contact between the neonate and an infected maternal genital tract. If the primary herpes simplex virus infection was acquired during pregnancy, then the risk of transmission is greater as compared with reactivation of a previous infection. Incidence of neonatal herpes simplex virus infection ranges from 1 in 3200 to 1 in 10,000 births. Intrauterine infection is associated with hydrops fetalis and intrauterine fetal demise. The characteristic triad noted at birth, it includes skin lesions consistent of vesicles, ulcerations or scarring, eye damage, CNS abnormalities such as hydranencephaly and microcephaly. Clinical manifestation can arise any time during the first 6 weeks of life, but usually occurs within the first month of the life. So this is the picture which is showing the skin lesions and lesions on the scalp of the baby which is infected with the herpes simplex virus. How we can diagnose it? The viral culture or PCR of the swab taken from the lesion. Treatment is acyclovir 400 mg TDS. Mode of delivery. If the woman has primary infection, always do the cesarean section, and if there is recurrent infection, then normal vaginal delivery can be conducted, and cesarean section is done usually only for the obstetric reasons. And one thing is very important, if the patient has primary infection, always try to delay the membrane rupture. That is, do not do any membrane rupture or fetal invasive fetal monitoring during the labor, because it can transmit infection to the baby. Syphilis. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted infection caused by Trichonema pallidum. Infection can be transmitted to the fetus at any stage of the disease. Rate of infection 60 to 100% during second stage. Transmission rates slowly decrease with increasing duration of the disease. Women untreated early syphilis, 40% of pregnancies result in spontaneous abortion, stillbirth or the perinatal death. There are the features of the primary syphilis, secondary and tertiary syphilis. Primary syphilis presents as painless genital ulcer which is called as condylomata 3 to 6 weeks after infection. Secondary syphilis 6 weeks to 6 months after infection, and it presents as maculopapular rash. Tertiary syphilis, there are the features of cardiovascular manifestations and neurosyphilis. What are the effects of syphilis on the fetus? Early infections, if untreated, it can cause miscarriage, stillbirth, neonatal death, IUGR and premature delivery. And if a baby survives this infection, so among the survivors, there are signs of either there is early congenital syphilis if it appears within first 2 years of the life, and the late congenital syphilis if the features of the syphilis or clinical manifestations occur after 2 years of the life. What are the features of the congenital syphilis? Hepatosplenomegaly, jaundice, generalized lymphadenopathy, hemolytic anemia, thrombocytopenia, leukopenia and leukocytosis, hydrops fetalis, rhinitis, which is usually very infectious, maculopapular rash, desquamation, pemphigus syphiliticus, which are the vesicular bullous eruptions of palms and soles, petechial lesion, bony lesions, osteochondritis, periostitis, and pseudoparalysis, syphilitic leptomeningitis, which can cause neurological symptoms, chorioretinitis, salt and pepper fundus, glaucoma, and pancreatitis. So this is a picture which showing the features of the congenital syphilis. Late congenital syphilis: interstitial keratitis, nerve deafness, Clutton's joints, that is there is sinusitis and restricted movement, Hutchinson's triad, which consists of Hutchinson's teeth present at the time of the birth, interstitial keratitis, aids nerve deafness, mulberry molars, flaring scapulas, hydrocephalus, mental retardation, frontal pausing, saddle nose, protruding mandible, high arched palate, perioral fissures, saber shins, which results in anterior bowing of the tibias, Hutchinson's teeth, which are the presence of peg-shaped upper incisors at the time of the birth. How we can diagnose syphilis? The examination of placenta and umbilical cord for the pathology, dark field microscopy of suspicious lesions, body fluids. Clinical findings are usually suggestive of the syphilis. Among the tests there are non-treponemal tests and treponemal tests. Non-treponemal tests are VDRL and RPR, which is the rapid plasma reagent. The quantitative results correlate with disease activity, therefore helpful in screening. Titers rise when disease is active and fall when treatment is adequate. Among the treponemal tests, there are the treponema pallidum heme agglutination assay, fluorescent treponemal antibody absorb test, and enzyme immunoassay. Among the management, always confirm the diagnosis, refer to the genito-urinary medicine clinic, rule out other sexually transmitted infections, and if there is syphilis, then start the parenteral penicillin, and there is 98% success rate after the start of the parenteral penicillin. Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction. What is Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction? After the start of the parenteral penicillin, a reaction may occur with treatment as a result of release of pro-inflammatory cytokines in response to dying organisms. This presents as a worsening of symptoms and fever for 12 to 24 hours after commencement of the treatment. It may be associated with uterine contractions or fetal distress, so many clinicians therefore admit women at the time of commencement of treatment for the monitoring. Chickenpox. Chickenpox is caused by a herpes virus called as varicella zoster virus, which is transmitted by droplet spread and direct contact. Neonatal varicella infants whose mothers demonstrate varicella in the period from 5 days prior to delivery to 2 days afterwards are at high risk for severe varicella. The infant acquires the infection transplacentally. The infant's rash usually occurs towards the end of the first week to the early part of the second week of the life. Maternal IgG is able to cross the placenta if delivery occurs after 30 weeks of the gestation, and which can give some immunity to the fetus. What are the features of the fetal varicella syndrome? If the mother has contracted chickenpox during the pregnancy, then there are the severe fetal infection, and the features include skin scarring in a dermatomal distribution, eye defects which includes microphthalmia, chorioretinitis, cataracts, hypoplasia of the limbs, neurological abnormalities which includes microcephaly, cortical atrophy, mental retardation, and dysfunction of bowel and bladder sphincter. So this is the picture which is showing you the herpes zoster involving the lumbar dermatome. So you can clearly see the rashes in the lumbar region. This is the table which shows the time period in which infection was occurred and what was the outcome in the fetus. If the infection was occurred between 7 to 28 weeks of gestation, then there is fetal varicella syndrome, and you have already known what are the features of the fetal varicella syndrome. And if the infection occurs from 1 to 28 weeks, there is neonatal or childhood herpes zoster. If 2 weeks before the delivery, then there is neonatal chickenpox. 5 days after or before the delivery, neonatal disseminated chickenpox with septicemia and increased mortality. The treatment: if the woman was non-immune and she has history of contact with some chickenpox patient, then consider giving her varicella zoster immunoglobulin. If the lesion is established, then start oral acyclovir 800 milligrams 5 times a day for 7 days. And always avoid delivery during the viremic period, that is, which starts from if the infection has occurred 5 days before the delivery, then avoid the delivery. Because during delivery the viremic period can cause severe postpartum hemorrhage, thrombocytopenia, JIC, hepatitis, and also there is high risk of varicella infection of the newborn. Thank you. So this today's lecture covered half of the perinatal infections, and inshallah in the next upcoming lecture we will discuss the remaining perinatal infections.